Hello, and welcome to part 6 of this build. In this episode, we'll be covering the belt and all of its accessories. Let's go back to my past self and watch me go through the thought process of trying to figure this belt out. And spoiler alert, I learn a lot more as I go, so what I say here is not final. Okay, so there's only one piece left of armor for this. Still a lot of sewing and other stuff, but he has 2 hip plates, one on each side. The one on the left is all chewed up and then has a bunch of skulls kind of hanging from it. So to measure that, I am going to put the belt on, as stupid as this sounds. So the way these guys wear their belts is the traditional way, with the belt actually being at the belly button. I'm no seamstress, so I don't know all the correct terminology for this crap, but it's not like it would be for us today wearing it, you know, at our actual belt loop. Their belts, pants used to be higher. I guess your actual spot is supposed to be around the belly button, you know, especially if you're old, and it goes all the way up to here. Anyway, this is the belt that I'm going to be using. I just bought it at Walmart, but it's the exact kind that you would see on this guy. It's double riveted, and that's what I want. It's also black. Well, it's like a really, really dark brown, so I can probably just weather this with some paint. All right, so that's about where our belt is going to be when we're wearing it. Now, I can't stand back far enough. Maybe I can. To me, it looks like the hip plates goes down to about finger's length. So this is about how long I want the plate to be. It's going to start, looks like a hair below the belt, and then goes down that far. Now I am out of construction paper right now. Fortunately, the only thing I do have is this scrap Hobby Lobby foam that is honestly kind of junk. It's good for what it is, but it's soft, and it doesn't matter. It's junk. I don't even know why I have it. I found it in a scrap pile, but this will give me a good idea of what I'm doing if all my markers don't run away from me. What I'm going to do is just cut this out. First, I really don't care. I'm going to compare it into the mirror. Obviously this is way too wide. I want to say, I guess I should have done it this way first, huh? Yeah, that looks about more right, because it is stopping above the knee. Yeah, let's say about there. And we'll go up. That seems about as high as we want. Yeah, okay. The most crudest of sketches, but the innermost is what I want, hopefully. Now, well, we are on the subject of this, and I'll probably end up cutting this anyway. So the belt is going to be here. Obviously, how's it going to stay from just falling down, especially since everything is going to be on it. All the skulls, all that stuff, especially since if you look at it all, it's all on this side. The 3 skulls and then the sword will all be right here on this side. I have 2 ways to go on about it. One, obviously, the most obvious, is that this guy's wearing a pair of suspenders. So there's going to be a leather pair of suspenders that goes over the armor. It looks like those suspenders are also what holds the cape in place, because there's these skull pins that but anyway, those skull pins that's holding the cape is right over the suspender. So I'm assuming that it's attached onto the suspender, and that's how the cape is held in place. That's for another video. Other thing was that I had bought a bunch of skulls a while back in preparation for this project. I bought a handful of these. They were supposed to be in different sizes, and that turned out to not be the case. But the idea was to have these, and they would all be, but I feel like these are maybe just a hair too big. I don't have anything else. I don't know if a skull this size would be, yeah, something this size would be probably a little better. I did just use one for something. What did I use it for? Oh, that's right. Yeah, it was the skull for up here. So in game, the skull on the pauldron is a hair smaller than the others. It looks like I might end up having to try and find another skull this size ×3 for the hip. That'll be some Amazon shopping, but what I will do is do the same thing I did with this one. Everything in foam clay, and then carve out the skulls. Because the more I'm looking at this, he's got this crap carved out in all the skulls. Some of them also have a, I can't tell if it's just like a crosshair or if it's a nurgle symbol on the forehead as well. Hard to tell. Images are not always the best, but play around with it, do some artistic decisions. But anyway, I have what I need now for the hip template, for at least the dimensions for the hip, and I can finally move forward with that and be done with all of my armor pieces. With my foam template started, I needed a way to make it a lot more clean and usable. This wasn't the smartest way to go about this, but it used what I had within arm's reach, and it worked. I then grabbed my ruler and started measuring out where I wanted the pieces to be split. Once I had my template, I split it up into 3 pieces and then transferred that to foam. This was all 10mm foam, just like the rest of the armor, and these 2 seams were getting a 45-degree bend each. That means 1 angle cut and 1 straight cut joined together. With those all cut out, give them a coat of contact cement, press them together. From there, I needed to carve out the battle damage. The left pauldron was partially broken, so I pulled out my reference images and drew out where the breakage was, along with the mounting holes and the locations of the scratches and chips. Once I had those figured out, I started cutting. Once I was taken care of, I brought out my Dremel booth and cleaned up all my seams and edges. I was supposed to start the sewing stage today, or yesterday. I'm still waiting on stuff to come in the mail from Amazon, which I did get. Most of which is like little rolls of leather and stuff to make the suspenders, and all the little bits to make it all work. And obviously it's very hard to get any pictures of the Scab Captain's suspenders because he has the pelt and the cape and all that there. So my idea originally was, oops, why don't I just reference other enemies in the game? Shares a lot of armor with other guys, figure the suspender should be the same too. And for the most part it looks correct, from the back and front and everything. But I think I ran across 1 or 2 pictures that I had of the Scab Captain, and it looked different. There was something off about it. In the gap in the back of the neck, behind the cape, where it droops from one connection point to the other, I don't see any suspenders at all. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. So I'm like, I had to go get fabric. No stores had fabric. I'm like, I'm literally at a standstill right now, except for doing these suspenders. I'm like, I better do this. If I'm gonna do this right, I need to know exactly how they are. So I went back in game, played probably about 4 or 5 matches against the Scab Captain, assassination missions. I got a ton of images from that, and fortunately I got lucky enough to get the cape to fly up when he like would lean over, and I was able to see his back. Got some good ideas. It looks almost like the suspenders clips through the chest and then just disappears, which is fine because I can just make it lead up right toward the one skull button fits for the cape. That's fine for that. Ran into another issue, logistics issue, on the left side where the pelt will be, or is that the right side? Right side, so yeah. And because that pelt's there, the belt is in front of the pelt, which means how is that gonna hold anything unless it goes through the pelt? So I'm still trying to figure that out, and everything's still not making any sense. And I'm like, okay, I'm so confused how to make this work. But yeah, in a video game, they can take a lot of artistic liberties. You know, you don't have to take a lot of logic and reason into how things are going to fit. If it looks cool, it looks cool, and that's all that matters. But I'm trying to make it work, so I need to figure this out. So as I'm getting these screenshots, I noticed something that's only on the Scab Captain, not the other guys. He has armor plating under his belt, and that's what his belt hooks onto. This one picture I saw, when he bent over and his cape went up, there was a piece of armor plating on his lower back that went halfway up his back. And I was like, what is that? And I saw it, and I could see it followed around the belt, and there was actually a loop that held the belt to that plate. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's how the suspenders work. The suspenders aren't attached to the belt, they're attached to the metal plate. I was like, that's genius, because if that metal plate is around the waist, I can have the pelt and then the belt over top. I was like, that makes sense. And it also makes sense why, if you look at the front image, you can't see that metal plate behind the belt, because he has a leather tabard that goes from his chest down, which is also over the metal plate. I figured it out after just taking a few extra screenshots, you know. I was gonna make sure you got your reference materials. Hi, Sable. What do you have? Do you have dust on your face? What were you in? Let me see. Woo! Ah. You wanna say hi to the camera? No. But yeah, so I have one more armor plate to do now that I realize that, which is going to be good. It's going to help figure out everything else. It's going to make the suspenders a lot easier too. I'm going to attach them directly to the chest piece then, which I'll probably still do with these, but these are kind of ugly. I was expecting these to look a little nicer than what I got, but I'll figure it out. So yes, that waist piece is going to come first. Then I'll figure out the suspenders, and because it's going to attach directly to the chest piece, that's going to make the logistics of everything else so much easier. It's going to hold the belt up in all 4 places. Yes, because when I was looking at the other enemies that also have suspenders in the same armor pieces, like the chest and hips and stuff, their suspenders were very complicated but overlapped and everything. And I had this one fear that, because they actually do go over the shoulders, let me grab this real quick. Because they go over the shoulders, that means that they're also going to go over this. Now, because this isn't a smooth piece and there's no tracking for this to actually attach to anything, that leaves the chance for the suspenders to pop off and then slide off. And if I have everything on, there's not much I can really do about that. So instead, having the suspenders mount like here and here onto the chest plate, and then like back here, yeah, on that, that'll make things a lot better for me. There's also one more thing. I mean, I've known about this, but I wasn't sure exactly how to do it. So there's a piece of leather that starts from up here and then wraps down around. Starts from the cape mounting point, the skull pin, and then I couldn't see anything from there either. I was able to get screenshots for that as well. It looks like it starts here, wraps around, back underneath, and goes up to here somewhere where the back pin goes for the back half of the cape. So it's actually like, supposed to look like a mounting piece. I'm thinking about making this out of foam, and then just painting it to look like leather, or make it out of foam, wrap it in leather, or something like that. Or like a, not leather, but like a pleather, you know, like a cheap, real thin, fake leather. But yeah, those are my current projects for tonight to get this all rock and rolling. Always do your research. Always do your research. So I forgot to mention it in the video, but right after this, I learned one more thing about the belt. I had mentioned that there were a pair of suspenders in the back that went from the chest piece down to the belt. They're not there. They are there on the basic enemy, but not on the Scab Captain. In that same image where the cape is flipped up, you can see the belt loops there for them with the hooks to attach the actual suspenders, but there are no suspenders. In a couple other photos, I was able to make out that that centerpiece in the back of the belt, there's actually a single strap that runs from that up to the chest. So if you're an eagle-eyed viewer and you caught that before I mentioned it, I caught it too, and it gets addressed proper. So I cut out a long 7-inch thick strip of 5mm foam. I wanted to use 10, but I didn't have any on hand at the moment, so I ended up laminating 2 5mm sheets together. I found the center of the strip and started figuring out the design of the center back. I also went ahead and cut out the notch in the back center of the chest armor that I had mentioned all the way back in episode 1. I then traced the belt pattern on the second sheet of 5mm foam and cut that out and began gluing them together. Then once that was dry, I glued them together while wrapping them around me. This way the inner layer runs shorter in shape, forcing the outer layer to curve to fit around my waist. This is the same technique I used and went in depth on in my gauntlet episode. I then brought out my mini Dremel booth and cleaned up all my edges, including that notch I had carved out in the chest piece. From there, I grabbed some elastic and some plastic buckle clips and glued those to the ends of the metal belt. This will never be seen when the costume's on, because this will be covered up by both the pelt and the belt itself. I then brought out a roll of my fake leather and cut out several strips to make my belt loops and suspenders. With those all cut out, I took them over to my sewing machine and folded and sewn the edges. All right, so what I've been doing, I have my metal, well, what will be the metal made of foam, plating for the inner structure of the belt that the belt will then wrap around and connect to. It will connect to via belt loops attached to the metal piece. That's how the belt will fit. That's how everything else will work. I already cut out the leather tabard, which will then attach to the chest armor over here. Now, I can't attach it to that until that is painted because it's gonna have to glue to it, and I don't want to accidentally overspray anything onto it because I 100% will, unless I wrap it all up, and I'm not doing that, so that can't be attached or even checked until that is at least primed. Same thing with this. I cut out a ton of strips, measured them out. About 7 inches will get me a full wrap around for this. A little bit of hang for what I need. I cut out more than what I needed. That way I have extra to work with, but that's what all of this is. Also, parts of this will be the suspenders and the loop. It'll be both, and in the back and all that. But again, that also cannot be attached to this. These can't be attached to the chest piece until after they are primed. What fun. Another thing left to do with this material left. I do like this. This is like a fake leather. It's a little stretchy. I kind of like it. It's cool. It looks really good. Looks like leather. You can really see it too well. I don't know. Next up, there are 2 pouches, or 3 pouches. 1, 2, 3. 2 on the left, 1 on the right. I have them. There's also the string that will then wrap around that the skulls hook on, which I am currently still printing, or trying to print. I already did the one. Second one failed. Reason it failed is because my filament snapped, and that's not an uncommon issue because this crap is from 2020. It's 4 years old, and if I'm going to keep printing, I think I should probably buy some new filament. I feel like I'm going through Con Crunch, and it's not even close yet. Con Crunch does not start at a specific time. Con Crunch is gradual, and it starts when you start building, and it just gets worse and worse and worse until you're done. And I still have a month and a half left. I'll get a little less than that, maybe like a month and a week. Yeah, I'm starting to panic now. Okay, so since I can't really go much farther with hooking everything up, what I can do at the very least is, while still working with the fake leather fabric, is make the pouches. This character in particular has 3. He has 2 on his left and 1 on his right. Obviously, I want them to be as accurate as possible. So I have one of my hip plates, and I'll probably try and just, granted the hip plate's going to hang a little bit lower, but we're just looking for a general idea. I don't seem to go too far below, so I'm going to say 5 to 6 inches tops. And probably about 3 inches wide, so 3 by 6, I think about right. I can work with that. Now I have a ton of this. I'm so glad that I have as much as I do for the role I have, because I'll be have to doing this again when I go to do her costume, which I haven't even started yet, and I have a month and 1 week to get all this done. Con Crunch Panic isn't even about mine at this point. Con Crunch Panic is about getting hers done. Uh, I have all the armor templates made for it. A lot of the fabric is going to be based on other things, so when it comes time to starting hers, I can dive right into it. I'm hoping that after this, maybe a few other things, I'll be very close to being able to just let this sit. Maybe take the stuff out and prime it so I can start doing everything else. But the amount of time it's going to take left to still finish this, plus build her entire suit, I feel like I need at least another month. This sucks. And from there, I started working on the pouches. These will be a wraparound design where the front, bottom, back, and top will all be one piece, and the left and right sides will be their own pieces, making each pouch comprised of just 3 pieces of fabric. I started with folding and pinning the edges for my main piece to then be sewn. To be sewn when Sable lets me. Don't worry, I'm insanely cautious when she's around my sewing machine. I go out of my way to cover up my pins, stop sewing, and on top of that, I always triple check for my pins when I'm done, just in case any fell off onto the floor. Last thing I want is for my little void floof to get hurt. And from there, I made a guess at where the belt loop will be attached to the pouches and pinned them to be sewn onto what would be the back of the pouch. After that came the very unfun task of pinning the left and right sides onto the pouches. This meant pinning everything inside out to be sewn. And if that didn't suck enough, then I got to sewing. The pins alone got in my way enough, not to mention that the shape of the pouches were just not ideal for a sewing machine. But I got it done and flipped them right side out. They actually turned out alright. From there, I started gluing on all the belt loops. They were already cut to length and I'd already pre-marked their locations with a marker. So this really only required some hot glue. For the hip plates, just to be safe, I glued a thin nylon strip to the inside to hopefully give it a little bit more support so that the foam wouldn't rip after mounting. I then rigged up the suspenders through their loops so that that end would be nice and snug. From there, I started working on the rear mounting. The portion attached to the chest will be permanently glued on with hot glue. And then the bottom half will be attached with Velcro for fitment. So let me show you how dumb I am. So I had glued the back strap, I'd glued the back strap onto the chest. There's a strap, this is how the back of the suspenders are going to work. They're attached directly underneath this, and they go straight to the metal belt around the waist. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'll glue that on first and then put the belt on and then get an idea of how long this is. So I mark how long I need it to be around here and give myself about an extra 3 inches. And you probably can't make the mark out, but yeah, then give about an extra 3 inches to go underneath. And obviously making that permanent would be an option, but at the same time, getting everything on and off would be a bit of a pain in the butt. So my option, or my thought process was put some Velcro in. Take some Velcro, put it on the very end, slightly below that line. And then when I go to put the belt on afterwards, I just wrap it around and this should line up, hopefully exactly with that spot in the back. And then that should at least be there. This stuff has a little bit of elasticity to it. It's a little stretchy. So when I go to bend forward, it should have a little bit of that give. I mean, it'll probably still pull the belt up some, but it'll probably help from pulling it up. I also gave myself a little extra slack for that reason too. So just gotta remember, I guess, when I put it on to kind of pull this up just a hair. But because I did that, that means I now have to sew this on here while this is already attached to this. I don't think it'll be too hard, but I do this stuff to myself all the time. There we go. It's not 100% even, but that's okay. Hi. Meow. What's wrong? You just want attention? Okay, let me stop recording. But yeah, it's not perfect, but it's gonna be hidden, so it doesn't matter. That's all. Meow. What do you want? It's me again. I was going to end this episode right here, but this next part, I have enough footage for probably 5 minutes of video. It's still belt related, so it's not going to hurt anything. I just don't want to make a whole episode for that by itself. So enjoy the bonus video. Alright, so in this video, I will be doing the skulls here. I had already 3D printed 3 of them. I got the same exact model. I had a handful that I wanted to deal with, but I like this one the most because this one was hollow. I scaled them to different sizes, both height, width, depth, just to kind of add a little bit of variety. So they're all just a little bit different. This was the first one I did. It was just a hair small. So I blew these 2 up to about the size I wanted and then kind of like stretched and molded them to different shapes. I decided to still keep this one though because as weird as I am, I'm like, oh, this could be like a whole family. Mom, dad, and kid. The skulls are still a little bit small, but they're gonna be hanging from my waist, so not my waist, I'll get my hip, I guess. So that's fine. But I obviously don't want them to just be like this. I want to do something to them before I paint them. And the idea is, you cannot see it, but I have reference images here from the in-game character. And there's a bunch of stuff carved into the skull. Now, I could just paint them on, but that would look terrible. So I decided to carve them in. And the way I did it with my sword for this character was that I layered the entire skull. Hi, Sable. Was that I layered the entire skull in a thin layer of foam clay. Added a little bit extra bulk to it, and then once that foam clay dried, I would then carve those markings out, and then you'd have an indentation. That would help smooth out all the imperfections on this as well. Don't care too much about the inside, but I also have my drill because if you can see the photos, which you cannot, there are hooks. That's what these are in the back of the skulls. because on the hip it's like there's like a string of leather and they all kind of hang from it. So that's what we'll be doing. I'll be drilling these holes in to get an idea of where I want them to hang from, to get the proper angle, you know, kind of showcase the whole family and all the defacements I've done to their skull with carvings. And once I get the holes made, then I'll layer it all in foam clay, let it dry for a bit, probably a day or two, and then by the time that's done, I'll sand everything smooth, start carving out all the stuff, and it'll be good to be sealed then to be painted. Foam clay I'm using is from Hobby Lobby. This is actually really good stuff, and it's only $4. I highly, if you're gonna buy foam clay locally from like a craft store or something, Joann's does not sell any. Hobby Lobby and Michael's do. Michael's is the worst, at least in my area, but if it's every package in my area, it has to be the same everywhere else too. I've gone over this countless videos. Let me open this up to explain, because I will gladly complain about their product until they fix it, which, I don't know, they'll probably just stop selling it altogether at some point when people stop buying it. So this has multiple layers of, I guess you could say, protection, maybe. That was a bad way to do that. That could have ended painfully. So for starters, we have this little tab that keeps the lid on, which is sometimes very hard to get off. There we go. But now with that off, I can now pop this off. Inside this container is your clay in a vacuum sealed bag. Now you can see this is pretty decent. I mean, in terms of how well it's vacuumed. There's a little bit of air right here, but really not a lot. This has been sitting in my cupboard for probably at least 3 to 4 months. I bought a handful in bulk because I didn't know how fast they would sell out, or if they would just discontinue them. Fortunately, as of right now, they still tend to sell a crap ton of these, and they're all still in really good condition. Now, if you were to see these in Michael's, now that I opened them up for the first time, they would look like this in the store shelf, literally like this. That's how you almost every one, because whatever the makeup is inside of their actual foam clay, it must give off some kind of byproduct inside that lets off air, and then that air fills the bag, and then the bag just blows up, and then that pressure from that bag blowing up pops the lids off. So now you have like a package just sitting like this on the shelf, and they're all like that, but the vacuum bag's never been opened. So when you finally go to open the whole thing up, your foam clay inside is hard as a rock. It's already dried, and this obviously is not. This is the kind of texture you want. You want it to be very rubbery, because this stuff air dries. But yeah, something's screwy with the whole product over at Michael's. I don't know if it's whatever compounds they use to make their foam clay with. Sable, what are you playing with? She wants to be a crafter too, apparently. Oh, she has her ball, that's what. Okay, she's just playing. But yeah. So something is definitely messed up at Michael's. Whatever the compounds they use for their stuff, it's either not right or not good. I don't know what it is. But whatever Hobby Lobby has going on here is pretty good. Like I said, it's $4. It's like $3.99 for all of this. Now, on the flip side, everything I just said about Michael's foam clay, on top of that, theirs is like $17. So you get something that works and works well for $4, or you can get something that's already busted in a sense. I mean, it's already not usable, and it's $17. So it's not, as much as I'm not a fan of Hobby Lobby, their foam clay and foam products in general are actually really good. So you can put aside any differences you might have for the store itself. Go for it. Before foam clay, I started with drilling a hole for my hooks. I bought this pack of hooks off of Amazon. I probably could have just gone to the hardware store, but I was already making a handful of other Amazon purchases for fake leather and buckles, so I just threw this in on the list. Once they were all drilled in place and at the angle I needed them for hanging, I knew that they could get undone or eventually slip out of the skull. So I brought out my hot glue gun to give the threads on the inside of the skull a little extra support. While I waited for that to heat up, I started layering my foam clay. I didn't need a whole lot. Hobby Lobby foam clay is very soft to work with, and if you play with it enough, you can get it to lay pretty thin on the surface. It really only took a small handful for each skull. And once the first two skulls were covered, my hot glue gun was warmed up, and I filled the inside around the screw with hot glue, and then went back to finishing the last skull. Once that was done, I let them sit for about 24 hours before touching them again. The very next day, I brought them back out, and came time to do some carving. I used a lot of screenshots to figure out the carvings on the skull, but that said, I cannot for the life of me figure out exactly what these symbols are on the forehead. They're a modified version of the nurgle symbol, but I've tried looking up every symbol within the 40k universe, and I could not find this exact symbol anywhere. This is what was carved on these skulls in-game, so that's what's going on these skulls. And then on the back is our chaos arrows. With those all drawn out, I then brought out my X-Acto knife and started carving those symbols out, hitting both the inside and outside of the silver lines and removing the entire layer of foam clay in those spots. And that's that for this episode. To talk about the belt, unfortunately, that means I gotta put the armor back on, so I apologize in advance for the bad audio. Alright, I am back. As you can see, I'd mentioned before, I have fabric in here just to try and muffle the echo from the Scorget, so I apologize in advance if the audio is bad. And also, the camera is back as far against the wall as possible, so I'm going to be up against this wall back here, and you probably still won't see my head. How's that? That's better. Okay, so, the way we have this. Also, you're seeing this painted. I am sorry. the belt is already attached in through the loops. We tend to keep this all kind of already pre-attached, but then we have our mentioned clips. This goes over the tabard. And then the pelt, it's more or less goes up to the belt loop on this side, so you will never see that, or at the very least it's going to go to the end of the piece here. Then the belt goes over top of the pelt. I have to kind of feel for it, and there we go. In the back, under the cape, you can see I have the piece that runs from here up to the chest, kind of. And that is how it hooks and hangs. One suspender is exposed. The other one is underneath the belt, so you never get to see it. Probably could have this over just a little bit more, but yeah, fits just like that. As for other things, I do want to try and modify the pockets and bring them down just a little bit. I'd have to take them all off to do that. But one thing I did not mention, because I did not have a means of showing it, so this is one of my old phones. When I made these, I made them so that it would fit exactly inside. The whole shape is the exact shape of my phone. So this meant that when it came to doing anything con related, if I need to take my phone out, take a picture, it's right there. Hand out business cards, right here. Accessories, right here. So I had kind of everything I needed in these three pockets. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, before we go, I can also talk about skulls. I have to bring the camera down just a little more. But these are our skulls. Obviously I'll talk about paint later, but just to see, so you can get a better glimpse at how they looked finished with all the etchings. They are held on by a strap that goes by this loop, goes the whole way back around. So somewhere here. But with that all said, that concludes this episode. Up next, we'll be talking about sewing. So that's going to include our pelt, tabard, cape, and probably the tunic gambeson shirt thing he wears underneath. Military shirt, I don't know what it would be called. But that said, I'll see you in the next one.